Hello, everybody, and welcome to Remixing the Narrative. I'm so excited for today's conversation, which is entitled Normalizing Therapy and just how we need to normalize therapy, period, across definitely everyone. But primarily, we're going to be talking about the Black and Brown community and just what that means and reasons why we may or may not have this be a common household conversation, but we're really going to tackle some of those barriers and some of the things that we need to do in order to really make therapy something that is our everyday. And so I'm so excited for my guest today. I'm going to have her introduce herself in a second. But what I first want to make sure those who are coming in, as you are coming in, share this live because this is an open forum conversation. That's what I love most about streaming live is that, yes, we're going to be talking, but if you are in agreement, say something in the comments. We'll pull it up. If you have a question, put it up. If you have a disagreement, pull it up. So we can just really, I believe, through us dealing with it, we're able to heal, right? We got to deal with what we feel and what we're believing to be true in order for us to really make some solid decisions. So again, the chat is open for this to be an open conversation, but you will definitely get to see the realness between me and my sister here. So as you're coming in, tell us you're here. Let us know what you're thinking. And again, share this. Like, take no time to just share this on your page. So we're going to jump right in because I'm sure we got quite a bit to talk about. We're going to jump right to introduction. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself so we can all learn of all the brilliance we have on today's call.
Hey everyone, Jarima, I'm so grateful and honored to be here. Who would have thought, in terms of all the experiences that I've had to overcome to be here and be able to advocate and be a mental health warrior, right? Mm-hmm. And so my name is Dr. Shaniqua Jones. I am a soon-to-be 7-time author. So you heard it here first. I got my next book dropping on the 20th of March. And it's about what we are experiencing in this pandemic as parents and educators. So be on the lookout for that. But more importantly, I'm a mother of 5 beautiful children, 4 daughters, 1 son. I'm a restorative justice practitioner, which we'll get into, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I'm happily married, and I advocate and I normalize therapy in my own personal journey. And so I've been able to use my social media platform to really hone in on the idea of what I have experienced as being diagnosed with being bipolar and some, other obstacles that I had to face over my 40 years of living. Yeah. So I'm definitely grateful to be here and be able to share.
Awesome. So we're going to jump right in. And we were talking before we came live of just, I think the first thing we want to discuss is what's the difference, or if there is a difference, between mental health versus mental illness. And the reason I brought this up is because over the summer, I had a workshop and we kind of talked about this. And this was something that someone brought up of like, sometimes when people are thinking about therapy, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone. I think right away people are like, I don't want to think I'm crazy, right? I don't want anyone to think something's wrong with me. But a lot of that has to do with, I think, the way we have used these words interchangeably. And to be honest, understanding like just like we have physical illness, right? We have spiritual illnesses that I would definitely agree with. Yeah. They have mental illness. So us even saying that if you do have a mental illness, nothing is wrong with that. I think just the more we have conversations, we are able to clarify things. So I would love to hear your perspective on this idea of mental health versus mental illness.
Yes, ma'am, most definitely. So when I think of mental health and mental illness, the difference between the two is that mental health is proactive, saying that you might be in a good state of mind. You might not have some of the challenges that someone with a mental illness may have, but because we are human, because we are experiencing COVID like we've never seen anything like this before, and you may come from a functional background, that doesn't mean that it stops you from having to overcome obstacles. Exactly. So that goes to like, there's 7 different types of trauma. Most times when we think of trauma, we think of something that's been physical or some type of abuse. But trauma can be defined in several different ways. Like it could be one isolated incident that replays over and over in your mind. And because you haven't been on that healing journey, because you haven't seen a therapist, a lot of times people are like, oh, if I keep myself busy, I'll be good. But what happens is that when you stunt your growth and you make the decision that you'll keep yourself busy thinking that you're going to avoid that pain, what happens is when the next situation happens, long as you live, it's going to always be something.
Yep.
You want to suppress that pain, and then something else happened, and you suppress that, and before you know it, you're going to explode. And when you explode, what happens is it typically happens, you explode on a person that had nothing to do with what went wrong, or it could lead to more severe and heinous situations. And so when you think about mental health, I want you to think about the frame of mind, like being able to take a break. What does that look like? Time management. What does it look like to eat right? What does it look like to exercise? Oftentimes, especially in the Black community, we be like, oh, this is my self-care day. And I'm not knocking anyone. And I'm bald now, but people like self-care, I'm gonna get my hair done. Self-care, I'm gonna go get my nails and my feet done. Self-care, oh, I'm gonna just take a nap. But what are you doing to cleanse your soul?
Yes. Yes.
What are you doing to make sure your soul is anchored? Are you meditating? Are you praying? Are you journaling? Do you even have a dump book? Do you have someone as your go-to? And I'd rather us normalize therapy in the sense of everybody has, most people, not all, most people have somebody like, girl, let me tell you what just happened. Wouldn't it be better if you went to someone who was able to give you the context, to give you the prescription, not necessarily a pill, but the prescription or the solution that's coming from a practitioner perspective to get you over that hump.
Yep.
Opposed to talking to someone like, girl, yeah, I hear you. Okay, you hear me, then what? Right.
Exactly.
So if we can normalize therapy in terms of not looking at it in terms of like something that went wrong and being reactive, but if we could be proactive, right? So that's mental health, the proactive side. Like, not saying that there's an issue, there's a problem, there's a harm, but as a human being, you have emotions, and those emotions can vary throughout the day. The way the world is at this moment in time, that impacts your emotions.
Yep.
Whether you want to believe it or not, the social and civil and racial unrest that we are experiencing, COVID-19, all these things on top of one another are happening simultaneously at the same time. Is so very important that you take care of yourself. And so let's normalize seeing a therapist. Now, on the flip side, mental illness is saying that you have a diagnosis, whether it's depression, manic depression, bipolar disorder, and all these other different things that we could talk about. But that's the reactive side. Something is happening mentally, and so you need to get the assistance that you need. You might need to take medication and be okay with that. And sometimes we get to a point where it feel like you're a guinea pig.
Yeah.
Because what happens is the doctor's going off, the knowledge that they have gained. They went to school for this. They're looking at the diagnosis and say, okay, this is the prescription, the actual pill that you need to take. And so sometimes the dosage may be too low. Sometimes the dosage may be too high. And what I don't want us to do is that we give one time a shot and be like, oh, it didn't work, and it be done. Because we have to understand, like the things I tell my children, and not just my blood children, but as an educator, that the decisions we make, good, not so good, and indifferent, don't just affect you. It affects everyone connected to you.
Yep.
Because I don't want us to be selfish in thinking that when you love someone who has a mental illness, it takes a toll on you as well. So you need to be able to not just advocate for yourself if you have a mental illness, but you also have to understand the people who are around you so that you can be more productive, so that you can understand that you are not your mental illness. You're a person who is different in terms of your mentality. Yeah. Right. So that is the difference between the two. Mental health is proactive and mental illness is reactive.
I love it. And we're going to get to, as you talked about, some of those things that are triggers or things that might make it known to you and others that you do need maybe to seek some counseling. But I want us to get to like the beginning. Because when we're talking about in the Black and Brown community, I think it's important for us to see the relationship between the Black community and therapy. And so one of the things that I know to be true, I've learned over time that therapy is definitely me loving myself and me being able to understand that there are things that have happened to me, whether I know it or not, that impact my emotions, impact the way I view the world, the decision making that I make, and just really unpacking that, right? And so that has been something that therapy has done for me. And and for me, I was introduced to therapy right after my divorce. So it was after something that was major, but then also realizing that it's something that I need, period. It doesn't have to be after something very big or devastating like that. However, I do understand what comes from the Black community in therapy is this idea that we don't share our business, right? And so I grew up, very much so close to my parents, my siblings, like we within ourselves, cousins, but as far as you grow older, as I get older, me and my brother joke, like, it's stuff that, skeletons be starting to come out. You know what I mean? And when those skeletons come out, it's still very hushed. Like, we adults, this is stuff that's happened when I was a child, like understanding like where this cousin come from, or where, how did this happen? And it all comes back to, we don't, even within our family, we don't want to go too deep in it. And let alone, am I going to let somebody else know our business? So I would just want to speak to that and what you've seen just in your practice and even in your everyday, this relationship with the Black community and therapy, and connecting therapy in some way of like snitching. And even if it's on yourself, like this, because and you sharing about yourself, I'm gonna end up sharing about some other folks too. So what's your thoughts about that? Like therapy in the Black community?
Oh, man. So one, I'm Black. I come from a family. I have been coined by my family to a certain extent, and people who are close to me, that I'm unorthodox and I am an anomaly. And I'm okay with that. Like, I used to be like, oh, don't say that about me, but I'm not who my parents and my family are, right? Because they live their life. They're very private individuals, and I refuse to live my life, not to the point where I'm being disrespectful about, privacy, but how can any of us heal from a lie? Mm-hmm. And then we just pass that on to our children.
Yep.
And I'll do myself and my children and my family a disservice by living this false reality, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And so, being born and raised in the church, and it was like, if something went wrong, you pray about it. If you're not feeling good mentally, whatever it is, it could be postpartum depression, which I didn't even understand what postpartum depression was until I found myself in a psychiatric ward.
Yep.
Because these are not the conversations we have. Like, and so we got to be very careful, which I know we're going to touch on spirituality and religion and how it associates to mental health and mental illness. But I think it's very important that we not just normalize, but we humanize people's experiences, that we show more compassion and empathy, and understand that no one heals from a lie.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece that's very important too is that being able to have these open conversations, about therapy. So I'll give you a perfect example. I have a standing appointment with my therapist every week. It's on my family calendar. Now I could have made it private where only I can see it. But I want my children to see that not only am I talking to you about what you need to do, but I'm modeling the way by showing you what I need to do for myself, because I can't be anything to you if I can't be what I need to be to myself.
Yep.
Especially for, like, I've been seen as a big thought leader in my community. I'm very, I'm an advocate for, anti-violence, anti-bullying, anti-racism, just, anything you could think about. And so I have to make sure that as I continue to pour into others, that I'm being poured back into.
Yeah.
And so just like I make my appointments to go to the dentist and get my nails done, and, my glasses, all the vision, all that other good stuff that we need to do. I do that the same in terms of my mental health. And so when it comes to the Black community, we have to get to a point where, and I think I'm starting to see a shift. For me, I see a shift. Mainly because of what we are experiencing now, So when I talk to my therapist, she's like, I don't think I could take on any more clients, because it's just a almost 100% uptick in what I've seen in terms of new clients. Mm. And that's because people are starting to realize you're breaking down.
Yeah.
Just like when your check engine light come on, you take it to the mechanic and you get your car serviced. And what happens is, and there's some people who see the light come on, the check engine light, and they be like, oh, gee, no, just put some super unleaded gas in there, just add some more antifreeze, some crazy stuff. And then now you on the side of the road waiting on AAA to come pick you up.
Yep.
And that's and I think that's a good analogy when we're talking about the difference between mental health and mental illness, because mental health is saying that the check engine light is coming on. You are getting the signs that something is happening.
Yeah.
So before it escalates into a larger issue, let's get the help we need now. Don't wait till your check engine light come on, and now your engine is clunked out on the side of the road. Now you need someone to come and assist you. So I think that is a great analogy to help us understand that everyone needs help, whether you have been diagnosed with a mental illness or not. you know, we get help for everything else. You know, you can love God, you can lay at the altar, and you can lay on someone's couch too, all at the same time.
I love it. I love it. And I think even what you just said, like people are seeking help and assistance during this time. And I believe because one, there's so many different triggers that are being hit, right?
Yep.
And I think for some of us, as you said earlier, which is so true, we could just make ourselves busy. Like, you know what? I just had this traumatic loss in my life. I'm just gonna go on vacation. I'm just gonna go shopping. I'm just gonna fill my time up so I don't deal with it. Or, you know, I lost my job, or I did get sick, or whatever the case may be. It could be a number of things that can be triggers. Or, you know what? I don't have the best relationship with my parents. I'm just not gonna go over their house. You know, we just kind of disconnect ourselves from those things. I think that the thing that I've seen the most, even as me being an educator as well, like things are being magnified in households because you just can't run away from it. Like maybe your thing was like, I just come home late. That's how I'll deal with this. You know what I mean? Because what you ain't got nowhere to go. And so triggers are like going off left and right. Like, oh my gosh, the issues I got with my child, the issues I got with my husband, the issues I got with this person. I can't really just run away like I normally do, you know? And because of those triggers, I think that for many of us, it's like, okay, now I know I need some kind of help because what I was using to pacify me isn't working anymore. What happens, I think, I know even for myself, there'll be times where maybe one thing is triggered, but everything else is cool. But what happens if I feel challenged with my family, my health, this all at the same time? I don't know how to handle three things. You know, it's different when it's one. And so the thing that I want to share is during this pandemic, I think it's so important for us to really, like you said, really take inventory of ourselves and thinking about what are the things that are starting to come to the surface that normally because you have so much clutter in your mind and in your ear, now it's like really chill. So now you have to deal with you know, and you hit on postpartum. It's so funny because there's things, in your life that you battle and you think I'm over that, and then something happened and you're like, I guess I'm not over that, And I think that's why it's so important to have conversations because for me, I'm the same. Like after having my son, I suffer from postpartum. I didn't know, and the crazy thing is when I had my son, I had such a I had a smooth pregnancy, but a very rough delivery. And I remember the nurse even coming to me with the services, telling me about there because she pretty much was saying women who tend to have really traumatic deliveries suffer sometimes from postpartum. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna be cool, girl. I'm good. I'll take this pamphlet. It is what it is. But when I got home, like I really was like, what is going on with me? And I say that to say that my son is now 9, right? And he's my only son. And since then, a lot of life has happened that's made him my only son. But then I recently, a few years ago, realized I still have a lot of trauma when it comes to pregnancy. Like that's another reason why I haven't had another child. Is because in my mind, as much as my rest of my life has moved on, my body is kind of like, I don't think we want to go through that again, And so I say that to say that there's things we think that we're over, and it takes us really kind of sitting back and why don't I want to do that? We could just I just say no to it, but why do you say no to it? Why are you not inclined like you were before? Like before, I was like, well, I want 3, 4 kids, da da da, and I'm like, no, I'm good with my one. What made such a big life decision like that? You know what I mean? And so I'm just kind of getting us started with those who are listening. I think sometimes we could think traumatic experiences means right now I'm in a pandemic. Now I got all this trauma. This is 9 years ago trauma. You know what I mean? There's things that, and me dealing with that, I'm realizing, man, I really need to take inventory as to why I do the things I do, because I can even subconsciously have already made decisions about myself based on trauma I haven't dealt with. You know what I mean?
I totally understand. And I'm glad you made mention of triggers because in full transparency, I had my first 2 children by my high school or childhood sweetheart. Things didn't work out. I felt depleted because I didn't know what life was going to be like raising 2 children without him, because I solely relied on him in every aspect of my life. And so when he made the decision, like it's been a wrap, I didn't know what else to do. And so I found myself in 2001, 20 years ago.
Mm.
It'd be 20 years in April. I tried to take my life. And not only did I have postpartum depression, I was diagnosed with being bipolar. It wasn't until 4 years ago I started taking medicine. Because
Mm.
what happened was, you know, everyone was like, oh my God, she has a support system. When in actuality, even though I had people who loved me, when I did say, like, I don't know how to explain it, but I just don't feel right. And it was like, girl, you'll be fine. Because you know what? I was the life of the party. All quack finna come through and turn up. And when you saw Patricia, you saw Patrick, you saw me, like wherever they went out, vice versa. My babies were with me, but I was dying. I was literally dying on the inside. And so I made up my mind I didn't want to live anymore. But what I think was, not even think, what I know what was really happening, that was my cry for help. Because as long as I was coming to people, especially you talking about, church folks, it's like, let's pray about it, let's pray that spirit off of you. Like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, fam, but something I'm trying to tell y'all. So fast forward, we're here now. So had my first two children, and because I had a poverty mindset and hadn't really dealt with what I had going on. I didn't deal with my demons. I didn't deal with, the hurt. I didn't deal with the shame. I didn't deal with the self-disappointment. And so, as I went to school. I was a top A student in my class, dean's list, going, across, leaving my hometown because they're sending me to Denver for leadership conferences as a top-notch student. But I was still dying on the inside because what happened was I was suppressing that pain. And long as I was at school, long as I was in the classroom getting them straight A's, I'm fine. But I got to still come back home and deal with myself. Right. And so fast forward, I get into a toxic relationship, end up marrying a guy because I met his representative. I didn't meet him. I met someone, who he brought to the table was like, oh my God, he's so fine. He looked like Usher. And he looked like Usher to this day. And because of that poverty mindset, I wasn't thinking about his soul. I wasn't thinking about his background, and then didn't know he was addicted to drugs. And so those 3 years that I was married to him felt like 20. I went through living hell. You talking about domestic violence. I was diagnosed with cancer. I had, I was raped. All these things were happening. And because of the shame and guilt that I already had experienced early on, I didn't want anyone to know about the additional shame and guilt. So I kept those things to myself, not knowing that a lot of people in my community knew what was happening. They're just like, well, she ain't said, well, maybe we wrong, because it was just like an assumption at this time.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, when we talk about triggers, for the longest, if Usher came on the radio, my children tell you, I would turn the radio off. And to them, we laugh about it now, but that was a trigger.
Yeah.
And I used to love Usher as an artist, but every time I would hear Usher's song or someone would say his name, I'd be like, that was a reminder of my ex-husband.
Yeah.
And as simple as that may be for someone else, another trigger for me was he used to drink 211, which is a beer. If I walk down the aisle and see 211 in the alcohol, I'll immediately turn like, oh. But now I've healed from that, so I think it's very important that the most important thing, if you don't walk away with anything goes for me tonight, that I would love for everyone to get in the room, in your bedroom, your bathroom. Sometimes it have to be my bathroom so I get away from everyone. But whatever that, or if you have a war room, that's even more fantastic. Get in there. And if you believe in God, or if you believe in a higher power, whoever it is that you believe in outside of yourself that's higher than you, sit with yourself. And start, I think that's the hardest thing. It sounds simple, like, okay, cool, I can chill out, sit here. Sit there and then start asking yourself, like, go through your life and be honest with yourself. Because if you can't be honest with anybody else, please be honest with yourself. And once I start, I wrote a book about my life in 2016-12, a memoir to my younger self. That was my form of narrative healing. But keep in mind, it goes back to what you were saying about the family. Like, because if I tell my story, guess who else's story about to get told?
Exactly. Yeah.
So out of respect, I went to my family like probably 6 months before I wanted to release the book and say, here go the draft copy of the book. I just want your blessings. And I believe what happened was, because this is so like unorthodox again, it was like, all right, we support you because we love you. You came out on the other side. And so we don't want to, deter you from doing your thing. But I think what really was happening was they said, yes, like, she's not about to really release this book. And so when it came out, like, my family was like, G, we cool on you. Like, we love you, but we're going to love you from a distance because you just put us out there. And even though I was very conscientious of not putting names, but if you know me, you know who my mama is. If you know me, like, oh, she's talking about her oldest brother. Oh, yeah, I remember that time, right?
Yeah.
I say all that to say that once I start to sit with myself and then wrote a book about it, not saying you got to write a book, but at least journal. Write yourself a love letter. Write yourself an apology letter. Like, Shaniqua, I apologize for the hell I put you through. I apologize for not seeing your worth, whatever that may be. So I appreciate, man, boo, I appreciate this conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy, when I say that, and it's just the only way I could, because I feel like when I see crazy, I mean, just like alignments. Let me change my words. I believe in divine appointments and times, right? And the reason I say is last week we had a conversation just talking about, education, reimagining. And at the end, we were literally just chopping it up as ladies. And the conversation of therapy came up. And I, at that moment, didn't know what I wanted this week's topic to be. And so as we were talking, I said, you know what? I'm currently and so this is giving me life because I'm currently in a space of looking for a therapist. Like, I had someone and then, different things change. And now I'm like, okay, I know I want this to be a part of my everyday. But as you're speaking, it's just making me think about like things we just need to consider overall when it comes to getting in a place of choosing. I know we'll get to that as well, but the one thing you said that I don't want us to miss in this trigger part is like not being dismissive, right? I think sometimes when people are doing that work and they start to realize, man, maybe this is something I need to explore more. Maybe this is something that bothers me. Sometimes if we're not ready to deal with ourselves, someone can come with us with that response, and our response is, girl, you good. You know what I mean? Or you just a little depressed. Let me come over there. We're going to come over there and we're going to have
wine.
We're going to be wine. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what? Us starting to talk is going to make other people start having to talk about themselves. And I think that also comes in as we're healing, really kind of realizing who we having these conversations with. I applaud you for talking to your family about your book. But I think also, I'm sure you had to have people around you, just as you had as much people kind of giving you maybe grief about it, someone who's like pushing you on to continue that healing. Because if you don't have the balance, I think if you have too many people that's like, you're good, which is going to lead us to our next question, you can start feeling like, well, maybe I am good. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe, I should keep this to myself. So I mean, if I can't, we're going to do takeaways at the end, but we have to sit with ourselves. And if you're not ready to do the work, don't stop somebody else from doing the work that they see they need. You know what I mean? Know yourself enough to say, you know what? I'm glad to hear this. I'm not ready to have this conversation though. Like, do that for your friend versus being dismissive of them doing that self-work, because a lot of times when we're doing that work, we're looking for those around us to be that support. But you might on this journey realize that they can't be the same support they were in the beginning because they're not ready to do the work themselves. And so that's what I thought. I was just like, man, as I keep continuing to uncover myself, maybe some people I thought were going to really be my ride or die in this area, maybe they're just not ready for that yet. And just how you going to deal with that, Because it is an isolating thing.
It is.
It is very isolating. And you hit on, and this is the question we talked about. So I asked Shaniqua, I said, we going there?
Woo.
I said, what is something you think we need to talk about in this conversation? She said, spirituality and how religion plays a part in mental health. And I'm just going to jump it off with saying that, yes, it does. And this is coming from a woman anyone who knows me, that I am all about my relationship with God. I am all about loving people. I believe in relationship, not religion. So I'm very big about just like living it out and being about it. But I also have been in spaces and participated in churches in which it was that dismissiveness, right? That girl, just go and fast, go and pray. And just like I said last week, when it comes to education, it's not an or, it's an and. You should fast, pray, and get a therapist. I was in a situation where it was like, no, you just go pray about it. That's it. Period. Period. And I've seen people with my very eyes, friends. Like I had a friend who, I mean, it breaks my heart because we were in the campus ministry together, and we later found out was schizophrenic, right? And he early was starting to show signs of it. And he was just so dismissed about it, because he was really active. Like you said, he was bubbly, but it's like he was starting to see a change. And I remember about like maybe a few months later, he stopped coming to church. And we were downtown, a few of my friends just kind of, we all were, hanging out. And we saw him, and he had like completely snapped. Like, I mean, to the point where he literally was like on the street, and he literally walked past and didn't know who we were. And it broke my heart. And the reason it broke my heart is because he was in a space in which he was asking for help. People saw signs. And instead of people being like, you know what, maybe you should go beyond this Bible study, beyond this, go actually see what's going on. I mean, again, we're not going to blame and say, okay, because they said that, like, you're still an adult. You still make decisions. You still have your own right. You know what I mean? But if you're looking for a place to be that guidance for you, and that's the guidance you get, then you probably are not going to go. And so that's just one situation. But even beyond that, people who deal with abuse, deal with other traumas, and within the church, again, because it can be exposing things within that space, we can be very dismissive of like, hey, just go pray about it, or we'll work it out, and then you feel like something's wrong with you. And so I could talk about this all day, so I'm gonna be quiet because I definitely want to hear your opinion. But I've seen extremes where it literally, I think it could have changed the trajectory of that man's life, and I've seen it on the other side where it created this bitterness with the church, because I know I need therapy, and I'm mad at the fact that you didn't tell me to go get it. You know what I mean? So all kind of things. So we can go there.
What I love about this particular question, so by me being a preacher's kid, I walked away from religion at the age of 15. I may not have known the context of the reality that comes along with saying that I don't believe. It wasn't that I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in this ideology, or I didn't believe in this doctrine of, if I don't serve God and it looks like this, then I'm going to hell. Right. And so I was starting, I was seen as a rebel without a cause. Now that part I will agree with, because I was a rebel, but I didn't have no clue who, what, when, where, why, and how. Right. And so I agree with you, Jarima. I walked away from religion a long time ago. And I had I turned 40 November 22nd of last year. November 30th, I rededicated my life to Christ. And my husband and my mom like, again? Yeah, I guess. I'm gonna keep trying this thing, because you know what? I had struggled for so long. And when he gave me this insight and this knowledge, he was like, you on Clubhouse. How you going, how do you use your social media platform for good? And so I just finished my second part of Serving God with a Mental Illness last night. So shout out to Shaniqua Jones, Julie Estes, and Pastor Greg Merriweather. And he's a pastor. He grew up here in the Chicagoland area, but now he's a pastor in New York. Okay. And the church that he has, they have a mental health facility at the church. And I think that is like, so like, that's perfect. Right. And so when we were having this discussion, some things that I already had came to the table with my own ideas, but to have them bring on this robust conversation about what spirituality looked like and what part it plays in mental health was very important. And so Pastor Greg, and then Julie, who's a licensed therapist, and then Shaniqua, that's her name. She's also a minister as well. And the things that we were sharing in this two-part conversation was that oftentimes what happens is we see the pastor as God. Mm-hmm. And so when we come to the church, it has to be a sense of humility from that leadership that says that, like, this is not in my wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. Like, I could pray for you and I could pray with you, but when it's all said and done, I need to have a mental health component added to it, so we could come along. And yes, I'm gonna give you the spiritual side of it, but you need the mental health and mental illness side. You need this type of assistance from a practitioner. Yeah. So I thought that was very great. And I do believe that mental, spirituality and religion plays a major role, especially when you have a person like myself that always felt convicted. Like, I love God, but how can I serve God when I know I'm bipolar? And so being able to understand that God is using me for my imperfections. He's using me for my flaws, and he's allowed me to like live my life by a mantra that he gave me, and says the journey not shared is a soul not healed, which is like right behind me here, right? So I have it everywhere as a constant reminder, because what is the point of you going through anything you have to go through? What's the point of overcoming those obstacles if you're not going to be willing to share it with someone else? Because you never know what part of your story. It may not be your whole story. It may not be the most heinous. It may not be the most egregious, but something about your story and humanizing your own experiences is going to help someone else heal. And so I think when it comes to the church, we have to get to, we got to get modern with our approaches, right? We cannot take traditional approaches for everything, because just because it's tradition don't make it right. It's just been your norm.
Yeah.
That norm could be dysfunctional. So all you're doing is passing dysfunction on and trying to cover it with the word of God, and that's not right.
Yeah.
So even for me, like, I remember telling the congregation at the age of 15, when they asked me, like, my mom was a missionary before she became a licensed evangelist. And so anything she was, I was little that. So when she was whatever, like when she was missionary, I was little missionary. They called me little missionary for the longest. Like, even sometimes on Facebook, that's how you'll know someone know me since birth, because they like, hey, little missionary. I'm like, girl, bye. and it's all love. But what I'm saying is that I remember at the age of 15, and I think I was going into my sophomore year of high school, and they usually have like a night service, and you stand, everybody come to the altar and they want to pray over all the youth that are getting ready to go back into a new school year, pray that God be a hedge of protection over you, all these great things. And that was beautiful. But God was not on my mind. My body was developing a way I didn't understand. The boys were starting to say, hey, girl, like, hey, big head, you know how that go. Mm-hmm. And so because I didn't have a good sense of self, that attention that I never got before, and now I'm getting it, I was soaking it up. So God wasn't on my mind, because if I told my mom, like, Mom's starting to feel a certain kind of way about boys, and she'd be like, oh, let's go to talk about Proverbs 31 and being a virtuous woman. I'm like, I hear everything you're saying, but when I'm at my locker first thing in the morning and such and such standing there looking at me, he ain't trying to talk about Proverbs 31. And so that played a major part in that traumatic experience, because all during that same time, when I stood there in front of the congregation and they asked me, did I want to be saved? I said no. And because I said no, they's like, oh, she demon possessed. And so now you got all these saints over me tearing. I'm like, it's not that I don't believe. I just don't want to be saved. So why we just, like, accept me for who I am. I'm not saying that you should just throw me away and ostracize me, but let's have a conversation. And so we have to start listening to our youth. We have to start listening to our congregation, that when there are issues, that you have to have the humility that it takes to say, as a leader in the church, that this is what I can do and this is what I can't do, and be okay with that. And then bring that mental health component into your congregation, so I think that's very important.
And what I want to make sure we make clear as people are watching. So as we're in here and we're having this conversation, this is a conversation for us all. So if you have a question, if you have something you want to add, something you want to throw in the conversation, please do. Because the reason I started this live broadcast saying the reason I love these conversations, because we're able to just build community. I really believe in us being able to build community, and the way we normalize something is by us readily having conversations about it, Mm-hmm. And in regards to this topic, the reason I think it's so important that we are having this conversation when it comes to spirituality, and I think in any relationship, is us just understanding where we start and where something else needs to begin, right? And so what I mean by that is that even to this day, like, I have amazing spiritual advisors, right? I absolutely love like the church I attend. I'm a part of a Bible study. It's all these different places that I'm in. But even when I'm in conversations with people, whether it's spiritual, my professional work, when it comes to even my nonprofit work, I know my level of expertise, and I know when I should bring somebody else in. I know what I can offer, and I know where I should step back and suggest somebody else comes in. And I think that's the same that we're saying needs to be true within the church. I think having conversations, not saying that you don't talk to your preacher, you don't talk to your ministry leader, you don't talk to whoever, but also understanding if you're in a position in which people are seeking you for advice, you even being humble enough to say, you know what, this is not my wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This conversation, I love you so much that I'm gonna tell that truth to you. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna let you know that, you know what, and you praying and you fasting, we can do that part together. But as far as this topic, I've never experienced it, or secondly, I don't know really what to say to you next. But let's together find what the next part of this puzzle is. And so I think that same thing is true with as someone I just saw post, we need to listen to our youth. The same thing is true in our relationships with our kids, because also, not just saying just in spirituality, just in parent and child relationship. And I'm always checking myself on that, where if my son, I can tell something is off, I want him to feel as if he can come and speak to me. You know what I mean? I don't want him to feel as if, right away, I already know what the response should be. Our kids can feel when we're going to be dismissive. Our kids can feel when we think we're saying you overreacting, you dramatic, and I've even had to catch that sometimes with my son because he can be sometimes, and and I can as well, you know what I mean? But if y'all really mad and upset, I need to sit back and listen, because that's really what they want us to do, and then we make a judgment. I think that who's to say, if your mom would have been more receptive, then you would have felt whatever. But I think the fact that you knew these things are happening with me and she's not going to want to hear this.
Yeah.
That in itself, I'm already making a decision of what I'm really going to build this relationship like and what I'm not. And so I think within spiritual households, yes, within the church, in our parenting, like that's where I think our first relationship with therapy begins. Like, do I really think someone's going to want to listen to what I'm feeling? And if my own mama ain't going to listen, if the preacher ain't going to listen, if this person ain't going to listen, I'm about to call up 1-800-WHO and have whoever listen to me. Absolutely not. And so I think that we need to normalize just having conversations, period. And then having a conversation with a therapist doesn't seem such like an abnormal thing that we do, Yeah. The next thing we tackled was, so now we want to, what measures have you taken to improve your mental health? And so I love how you said mental health is proactive, because I never looked at it that way. The same when we talk about our physical health, it's saying that you're trying to take a proactive approach to combating some things that could happen. So I would love, I think as we're moving to the section of like practicalities, like things that people can leave with, what have been some measures as you've kind of shared your story that you've taken to, really improve your health?
Most definitely. So again, I have a therapist that I love. One, she looks like me. So not only, and I think that's very important, especially now in the time and day that we live with this racial, civil, and social unrest, and I'm not saying that you have to have a therapist that shares the same race or ethnicity as you, but I definitely believe that makes a big difference. So I have a standing appointment once a week to see my therapist. I start my day off, typically prior to taking on this restorative mindset, my phone was right by my bed. So when I got up, first thing I'm doing, getting on my phone. I ain't prayed, I ain't meditated, I ain't read scripture, nothing. I'm oh my God, G. Oh, boo, look at this on Facebook. And it took one of my students a few years ago. This is coming from I think she was a junior, maybe a sophomore, junior at the time. She was like, I think that's when Instagram been around for a while, but it wasn't Facebook. It was one of these social media platforms. And she said to me, Dr. Jones, what I look like getting online first thing in the morning, I'm trying to wrestle with my own demons. Like, I don't want to start my day off like that. So what if you're a sophomore, junior, you were 15, 16, 17? And that and it's something about, that's why when it's the hashtag, whoever that was on Facebook that says listen to our youth, that moment that she said that, and I had just prayed to God like, man, help me be more productive. And then I come to work, and first period, she didn't have an issue. She was just coming by the office to say, hey doc, what's good, you need anything, you want me to go to the, because I know you ain't supposed to be eating Flaming Hots, but I got some, like, and those are the relationships I have with my babies, and I truly miss them. But I say all that to say that the moment she said that was the confirmation that I needed. So from that moment on, I started, forming a routine. And I'm not going to say I haven't fallen off from time to time, but for the most part, I'm pretty much consistent saying like, I don't have my bed. If my phone is, if my phone is a temptation, I'm not about to have my phone on the nightstand. I'm gonna have to get up out the bed and go grab the phone. But when I wake up in the morning, I'm making my routine and say, thank God for waking me up this morning, and saying my prayer and praying, not just for myself, not being selfish. And I know sometimes we need to pray for ourselves and that be that, but I'm praying for our nation. I'm praying for my, city, Harvey world. That's why I was born and raised. I'm praying for people that may not even understand me, that I know may have differences than I have, but preparing me for that day. And so when I pray, then I have the meditation app. I got a couple of apps on here, that I'll share as well. Meditation apps. And then let me see if I can pull this out real quick. So I have a journal. For those who know me, know I love to take notes and journal, but I have all the little flare pens and everything in different colors, and I'm drawing my arrows and stuff. That's good. I like that because I can categorize and compartmentalize my thoughts. But what I have here, this is not my journal. This is my dump book. What I do is before I go to bed at night, it's random. I'm just writing. I don't have to be like the handwriting may not be neat, because what happens is when you journal and you're trying to write cute, you might miss out on certain things because your mind trying to keep up with what you're writing. But with this dump book, I'm just writing. And then what I do, I go back and I reflect maybe a week later to see, was there some commonalities? Because when I get ready to go to bed at night, I want to go to bed with a clear head. So if I have an opportunity to say, before I go to bed, pull out this dump book and just get the writing for 10, 15 minutes. And then once I put it down, that's it. So when I lay my head at the pillow, it's been a wrap for the night. Yeah. So that's another thing that I do. And then I've incorporated, meal prepping. I think that's very important because a lot of times, not having a plan in place, it causes a sense of anxiety. I take my medication on time. I realize I can't take Lexapro during the day. I take it at night. 8:30 p.m., my alarm goes off, and everybody know, like, mama finna take her medicine. Not to say like I'm crazy or I'm off the chain, and sometimes if we out, my oldest daughter look at me like, Mom, not because I'm going to flip out because I don't get it, by a certain time, but I love the fact that there's a level of self-accountability, and then my support system, which are my children and my husband, to say, hey, you good? Did you take it today? So I take it at night because I realize for me, it works better at night. And so another thing that I do, it's called the Pomodoro technique.
I love it. We got to do that again. We got to set that up.
And that's important because, especially not even someone who has a mental illness, but for your mental health, you have to learn, especially now, most of us are pivoting and trying to understand what life look like, working in the home, remote learning, hybrid learning, all these different ways we have to reimagine education, being at home with your spouse. You probably don't even like them anymore. Like all these different things. You're like, oh my God, because work may have been an outlet for you. School, like you said before, school may have been an outlet for the child. And now everybody's in the same space at one time. And so another thing that I've just been able to do is utilize the Pomodoro technique, where you work for 25 minutes on a project, take a 5-minute break, come back, work 25 more minutes. And then, you can increase the time however you may need that's going to be conducive to the project and your needs and timelines. But you have to find something that works for you that's going to be a routine and be consistent with it. And so another thing that I do, I have 2 prayer groups, one with 2 of my best friends, and then another prayer group is with the women's circle, and being able to hold each other accountable and normalizing prayer and normalizing these type of conversations that we're having. Yeah. So those are just a few of the things, exercise, meal prepping, the app for meditation. Matter of fact, I can tell you what those apps are right now. So I have one called My Life. And that's an app where what you do is the first question it asks you, it says, how are you? And then it scales, all these different things. It gives you adjectives to use. And then based on how you respond, it gives you the meditation that meets the needs of how you're feeling in that moment. And My Life. Yep. And once you do that, you do your meditation session. It's usually 3, 5, 7 minutes. And then it asks you how you're feeling afterwards. Don't lie, because I mean, it doesn't benefit anyone, right? So you say how you feeling. Some days I be like, I still feel the same. But I know I took the time because I want that to be a part of my routine. Another thing that they have, of course, I have my Holy Bible app. I have my it's a meditation app. It's called Meditation. There's another app called Liberate. And then there's an app called Calm. And I usually at night I'm listen to the calm music so I can go to sleep. Sometimes my husband like, "But you want to live by the ocean or something?" Like, but it's calming for me. And then also just taking time to sit still, like walk away from the computer, walk away from the desk, walk away from the phone. I have learned how to put my phone down, because that was a wedge for me. That was wedge for me in my relationships. Like my mom, she'll be 81 March 3rd, and she still treat me like a little kid when I'm over there, because she'll be like, "Hey, I don't want you on them electronics when you in my house." My husband I'll text him like, "I call you when I leave mama house." But I love, that has taught me a lesson, being able to, if I want people to humanize my experiences and and be able to appreciate me and my presence, the best thing I could do is make sure that I don't use my phone as a distraction and spend that quality time. So those are the things that I do.
I love it. And Mika's on here. Hey, she says a healthy balance is my goal, naturally and spiritually. I think that and I'm truly, like, as everyone else listen, I'm listening as well, because I said this is a conversation. Something that I learned that helps me as well, because my mind is always moving and working, is the same thing. I don't necessarily have a notebook, but I was opening my phone. I have in my notes. You all might see it. Like, I literally, it's random. Like, I got things on here. Buy a new printer, get my emissions test, gotta, email. I mean, like, anything that's on my mind, like, I need to just get it out, because those are the things that for me wake me up. Those are the things that disrupt my peace, because I'm like, oh, I forgot. Oh, I forgot. And so doing that, doing that for me is like, I end my day looking at my list, and then I take off what I did, and whatever I didn't, I leave it on there, and I leave it. And I'm like, okay, when I wake up, I'll deal with it later, right? Also being able to share and do the things, like you said, like having those experiences that really do allow us to take advantage of the relationships that we have. So that's something that my mother is on as well. Like, she's on that with my son, but I've learned that as well. Like, just eat your dinner, like, enjoy the dinner. Like, you don't have to watch your YouTube video while you eating, and just really having those times be unplugged. And so I would say, as you all are looking at this question, think about some of the things in which you want to make sure help you improve your mental health, because it's different for all of us. I'm realizing something that I don't do that I need to incorporate is working out in the morning. That is something that, and I just have to make a shift, because I really don't like working out at home. I've just come to the grips with it. I don't, but
I think the same wavelength with that.
Man, so it's just like that thing. But movement in the morning helps me to get me just like in the right space to start my day. And so I've just realized there are things that I have not done that I need to do, because I know how it makes me feel. And so I need to make time for it and make adjustments, whatever needs to happen, because that is really what's going to help me do next. And I saw that in the chat they asked for those apps, and I will put them in there. We'll also post it on the podcast, so when people listen to this later, they'll be able to see it as well. So we will definitely make sure you get those apps. So my last question before we do our takeaways are, what are some tips you are willing to share when seeking a therapist? So what I mean by that, I'm on the search. Some of us on here are probably on the search. What are some things that you think we should be considering when we are seeking a therapist, or some questions we should maybe even ask the person, or even ask ourselves as we're on this journey of, maybe getting a therapist for ourselves?
Yeah, most definitely. So I know this may, I think for me, and I'll just put it out here like this. One of the most important questions is, do they take insurance? If they don't, what is their hourly fee? Do they have a sliding fee scale? Those are some of the main questions you need to ask about the finances, mainly because if you are going to do the work to find a therapist, I think it's very important to see how it's going to be sustainable and how there's going to be longevity in that process. And so you don't want to have a pause in that process when you just feeling like, you're starting to build the momentum and you having some breakthroughs, and then here it come like, oh, I can't pay. Right. So I think, and I want to also say shout out to Sister Afia. If you look them up, and I'll put that in here so you can share it.
Yeah.
Sister Afia, I'm actually the board president for her organization, and they do some phenomenal work and have a sliding scale fee. And they also collect donations. So for people who don't have the ability to pay, they're able to, help you through that process. And they're located on the south side of Chicago.
Okay.
I'll share that as well before we part ways. So I think those are some of the main questions you ought to ask. Those are the first questions about the financial piece. The next thing is, about posture. You best. And so there are times where I may have come across a therapist who makes me feel as if I'm a transaction. And I don't want a transaction, and it's very important that when you're talking about a therapist-client relationship, you want a relationship. You want something that's authentic. You want someone who's going to humanize your experiences and not just, check something off on a checklist. I also am very in tune with, for me, and everything is different for each person. So you want to make sure that their posture and their tone is conducive to your emotions, because you don't want that therapist to be a trigger for you. And now you need a therapist, right?
Exactly.
So you want to make sure that you're asking these questions up front, like what are the techniques that they use? You might not have the wherewithal to know something like, if they say cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, you might have to do some homework on your end to figure out, as they respond, what does that look like? What does that stand for? But I think two things I would love to share too before we go on to other tips I'm willing to share. That Therapy for Black Girls is a great website. I'll share that as well. Therapy for Black Girls. And then if you know anything about the actress Taraji P. Henson, she has an organization called the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, where they offer free virtual therapy. So though, Sister Afia, Therapy for Black Girls, and the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation are three great resources. But also another great thing, not just about the posture and tone that they use in terms that's going to be conducive to your emotions, but then also ask them, questions such as their history, their background, their academic background that led them to where they are, and what was the purpose behind them becoming a therapist, because everybody has a backstory. And some therapists may be like, it's a job.
Yeah.
And you will, and it's entirely up to you, but I want a therapist who's passionate about what they do. Because again, if it's just a job, then it's just a transaction. If it's just a transaction, then you don't have an authentic relationship. And so when, so I've had situations that before I even had great insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, PPO, all that great stuff, I was paying out of pocket. And with 5 children, a husband who has 5 children, there's 10 children total. It was times where she but we good. Not saying that she gave it to me for free, but you have to have a therapist who, one, yes, they have to get paid, but you also have to make sure that there's a level of compassion and empathy to continue doing the work that need to be done, because you built a trust and relationship with them. So I think that's those are my tips.
And I love that. I think that something else that you said that I took as a takeaway, because we're about to go into that, is just really understanding that this is a relationship, and I think a lot of times when we are trying to determine, okay, if therapy is for us, knowing ourselves and knowing what we need is going to help us make a better decision of who we ultimately pick as a therapist. What I heard is that as I'm on my search, just really looking at how do we vibe together? Like, how do we connect? Because I don't want to be in a session feeling like I'm forcing myself to be in this space, right? You want to be in a space that you look forward to, an expectation. Like, I know people in my life who consistently have therapists, and I've seen their growth, and I've seen their excitement, and not because they leave those therapy sessions smiling all the time, right? just because they leave it feeling as if, like, man, I'm really building this person, is helping me best understand myself. And so, as we talked about with parental relationships in the church, relationships matter. And I think I love that advice of knowing that this is something that's ongoing. So make sure from the jump it's set on a very solid foundation. You feel
Mhm.
there's someone to talk to. We financially are good. You know, you have the funds. It's the best timing. All of that, so that it's not a disruption. Because consistency, I think, matters. So I would love to just hear. Like, I know you gave us some amazing apps, and I put those in the chat for those watching. If there's any last minute questions people have that are watching, put it in the chat. We'll bring it up. If not, we're going to come to a close soon. But are there any major takeaways? You said quite a bit that you would want people, in summary, to walk away from today with.
I think the main thing I would want people to walk away with is take the time to sit with yourself. And I learned recently from someone I was listening to on Clubhouse, like Dr. Jones, I would even ask you to take it a step further and don't just say safe spaces, say brave spaces. And so I think when she said that, it was just like, yes, because sometimes being safe can stunt your growth, right? Because you kind of like tiptoeing around like, oh, and then you're careful about what you say to the point where you end up not saying anything at all. So I think when we reposition ourselves to be brave, that I want you to be brave enough to sit with yourself and do the internal work that need to be done. Not, and once you do that, then you are more able to say, like, when I'm looking for a therapist, this is what I need, because you've done a self-assessment about who you are, where you are, and where you would like to be. And then you need to find a therapist who's going to help you be the most productive individual you possibly can be. Right. And then you need to continue praying, and then you need to have a war room. I don't care if you have to set aside a piece of your closet. I don't care how small. Get you a space that is going to be a space just for you. No children, no animals, no spouses, no shoes, no purses, no Birkin bags, none of that. Just you and some words of affirmation. So I want you to be able to sit with yourself. 2, if you don't have a word for 2021, get the word. My word for 2021 is leap. And that's loving everything about my authority and power. You have to learn how to advocate for yourself, because we live in a day and age that advocacy looks different because everyone has an agenda, and having an agenda is nothing. There's nothing wrong. We all have an agenda. We all have goals and aspirations, but you have to learn the importance of self-advocacy, because self-advocacy and being able to sit with yourself is going to help you better understand you, so someone else can come along, such as a therapist, to help you on this journey, so you don't have to take this journey alone. And of course, you got God. Those are my 2 major takeaways.
I love it. Having a word for this year. I don't have a word.
Come on, boo. By the time me and you connect, I'm gonna be all in your inbox like, you think
I know I need it. I need it. So I know that so many people are appreciative of just one, because they've said it repeatedly in the chat, of your transparency, your openness. You just willing to just like really lay it out. And I know you said that that's what you're known for, being that anomaly. And I just want you to know it's greatly appreciated. Can you share, how can we stay connected with you? If someone is watching and they're like, man, I heard she on Clubhouse. What that mean? I know she got a website. Like, what's that website? Like,
yes. So I love it. So my website is www.purplepathbydrj.com. Oh, sorry.
okay.
Let me decline that. I told people, like, my family just waiting to talk to me already. Like, what's going on? I apologize, but yes, www.purplepathbydrj.com. My Instagram is Purple Path by Dr. J. My Clubhouse is Purple Path by Dr. J. Those are the best 3 places you'll be able to locate me. My email is purplepath@shaniquajones.com.
I love it. Someone in the chat said, excellent. My word is jump.
Yes, let's go.
Can you please tell me why did you choose jump? Please let us know, because I want to know why you're telling me why you chose jump. What does the purple path mean? Like, what does that represent? Like, what made you pick that?
So back in 2017, we released a documentary about my life that complement the book that I wrote the year prior to. My favorite color is purple, and then they captured a picture that we were going to use for the documentary, and it looked like I was walking on a path. And so that's where Purple Path came from, and I've been rocking and rolling with that ever since. And so Purple Path basically is helping people heal, helping people understand, what restorative justice is and restorative practices, what it looked like as a life application in the home, what it looked like in terms of walking away from zero tolerance policies in the school, because legally in the state of Illinois, we should not be suspending, expelling, and providing detentions to students at the highest rate that we are, even in the midst of COVID. And so SB 100 was a Senate bill that passed in 2015 that moved on to Public Act 00-99456. That's and so I might have mixed them numbers up, or 99-0456. That's it. I apologize. That says that we have to make sure we have every equitable and alternative opportunity for our students to thrive and move away from suspensions and expulsions. And if for any reason they are, children are suspended, what does the reentry process look like? Like, we just can't suspend them and they come back and you go right back into the class. There has to be some restoration between that student, the teacher, and the other people who may have been impacted by the wrong that had happened, so that we are learning the competencies that we need to have and holding each other accountable and building social capital and building resources and being able to do that in a safe environment. So that's the work I do.
I love it. I love it. And so I just wanted to tell you that I'm so appreciative of you accepting my invitation to joining us today to talk about normalizing therapy. I thank you again for sharing your story. I'm actually going to go back and listen to it myself just to get some more nuggets, because I believe that I hope you all understand this is the beginning of a conversation, not an end. And if for you are on the, considering therapy, trying to figure out if it's something for you, I will lean towards that. Yes, it is. But we really just want to make sure that we are seeing it in the right perspective, why it's needed. And Miss Shaniqua left so many jewels and gems for us to consider today. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for sharing. I'm gonna work on getting my word. I'm gonna work on a few different things so I can continue on my path of growth as well. So
all right.
All right, you all take care. See you next week.
All right, love you.